Hi, welcome. It's Stephanie, and this is the B2 course, Upper Intermediate, and this lesson is lesson 11. So, in lesson 11, we will be looking at narrative tenses. Now, I've called it narrative tenses 1 because it's a big topic, and we're actually going to split this up into 2 lessons. So, lesson 11 and lesson 13 will both be about this topic of narrative tenses. What do I mean by a narrative tense? So a narrative tense is something that you're going to use to tell a narrative, that is, to tell a story. So what we're going to start with is reviewing the key tenses in the present, in the past, and also some conditional tenses as well. Then we'll have a look at how we can order events in the past. So when we're telling a story, how we know what happened first. There's going to be lots of practice as usual, so lots of opportunity for you to try. So please make sure that you have some form of notebook or some means of noting down your answers, of making notes of what you think. Okay, so just to summarise, in today's lesson, you will identify the narrative tense, match the tense to a usage, and reorder a story. So this is a really useful lesson for reviewing tenses, for thinking about how we make a tense and how we use it. And that's what we're going to start with, a tense review. Okay, so the first slide we're looking at is focusing on the present. We're going to look at 4 tenses here: present simple, present continuous, present perfect simple, and present perfect continuous. Before we look at the slide, can you write down an example sentence of each of these 4 tenses? So we had present simple, present continuous, present perfect simple, and present perfect continuous. 4 tenses there. So just pause the video and see if you can write down an example sentence using each of these tenses. Okay, how did you do? Hopefully that was quite straightforward, especially present simple, I hope. Let's have a look at my examples. Okay, present simple, I wait. Present continuous, I am waiting. Present perfect simple, I have waited. And present perfect continuous, I have been waiting. Okay, so our next slide is going to be looking at the past. And I'd like you to do the same exercise again. So I'm going to tell you 4 tenses. I want you to pause the video and to write an example sentence for each tense. So number 1 is the past simple. Number 2, the past continuous. Number 3, the past perfect simple. And number 4, the past perfect continuous. So think about the previous slide when we were thinking about the present. This is just in the past. Pause the video and we'll check together. Okay. Past simple, I waited. Past continuous, I was waiting. Past perfect simple, I had waited. And past perfect continuous, I had been waiting. How did you do with those? Hopefully that was a useful review for you. Okay, the third area we will review in this lesson are the conditionals. So there are actually 4. So most people think there are 3. There's actually the 0 conditional. So we're going to look at 0, first, second, and third today. There is also a mixed conditional, but we will look at that in another lesson. So today we're just going to focus on these 4. 0 conditional, first conditional, second conditional, and third conditional. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to pause the video and to give me an example sentence using each of these different conditional tenses. Can you remember how to form them? We'll pause the video, see if you can write the sentence, and then we'll check together. Okay, let's have a look then. So a zero conditional. If it rains, the grass gets wet. First conditional. If it rains, the grass will get wet. Second conditional. If it rained, the grass would get wet. And finally, third conditional. If it had rained, the grass would have got wet. How did you do with those? Maybe slightly trickier, some of those ones, easier to confuse. Okay, so we've had a review of some of the most important tenses in English. What I'm going to ask you to do now is to have a look at 5 sentences, and all I want you to do is to tell me what's the name of the tense that's being used in these sentences. So 5 sentences, read the sentence and make a note of what tense is being used. Okay, so I always wake up at 7:30. This morning I overslept. The bus was leaving. If I had got up on time, I wouldn't have missed the bus. And my important meeting had already started. So pause the video and see if you can tell me what's the tense that's being used in each of these 5 sentences. Pause the video and then we'll check together in a minute. Okay, how did you do then? Let's have a look. Okay, I always wake up at 7:30 is present simple. Wake up, present tense, present simple tense. But this morning I overslept. Here we have past simple of the verb to oversleep. Remember, sleep is irregular. Sleep, slept, slept. The bus was leaving, past continuous. If I had got up on time, I wouldn't have missed the bus. Here we have a third conditional. And my important meeting had already started. Here we have past perfect simple. Had started is past perfect. Really super well done if you've got all of those right, or if you've got some of those right. If you're not sure, go back and have a look at the review slides just to check. Okay, so we've looked at what the names of the different tenses are. What I want us to move on to now is to think about how and why we use these tenses. Why do we need so many different tenses in the present and so many different tenses in the past? So we're going to move on and think about the use. How do we use these tenses? So as before, I will give you a review. I will break down the different tenses and we'll talk about why and how we use them. And then there'll be an opportunity for you to practice. Okay, so present simple is an action taking place in the present. Present continuous, an action taking place at the moment of speaking. So I am talking to you, you are listening to me, I am teaching and you are learning. It's happening now. Present perfect simple. Remember, we've looked at this in previous lessons and we're talking here about an action that started in the past but has an impact on the present. Something like, I have lived here for 5 years. Started in the past, but it's still true now. And present perfect continuous to emphasize the duration, the length of an action. So again, if you remember in a previous lesson, we have looked at this. We talked about the difference between a present perfect simple and a present perfect continuous. I have waited, or I have been waiting for 2 hours. If you use that continuous tense, you're emphasizing. So maybe if someone is really late and you say, I have been waiting for 2 hours, you want to emphasize the duration. Okay. In the past. So here we have past simple for an action that's finished. Past continuous, an action going on at a certain time in the past. So for example, at 1 o'clock today, I was eating my lunch. So the action of eating happened over a period, but it's in the past. Past perfect simple, an action taking place before a certain time in the past. And past perfect continuous, again emphasizing duration of an action, but this time in the past. So a similar idea to the present, but if it's a past perfect continuous, it happened in the past. Okay, and the final group we had are the conditional tenses. Let's have a look at these. So for the zero conditional, this is a general truth. So something that's always true. If you heat ice, it melts. You have present simple and present simple. If you heat, it melts. It's a general truth. First conditional is a possible and its probable result. So something is possible, and then you talk about the probable result. So if it rains, the grass will get wet. It's quite likely that that's a result if it's forecast to rain. Second conditional, a hypothetical condition and its probable result. So what you'll notice here is as we move through the conditionals, we move further away from reality. So a zero is something that's a general truth. First is possible, but now we're talking about the second and we're moving away from reality. So it's hypothetical. If I won the lottery, I would buy a new house. Maybe I don't play the lottery, so it's a hypothetical condition. And third conditional is for an unreal past condition and its probable result in the present. So what this means is it's something that's impossible to happen. It's something that's in the past, I'm reflecting on it, but it's impossible to change. Something like, if I had studied more, I would have passed the exam. So you didn't study and you didn't pass, but there's nothing you can do about this now. But you look back and you reflect on the situation and you use a third conditional to do that. Okay, so a lot of information to take on board in these slides. So I think it's a good idea to pause them, maybe make some notes, and also go back and have a look at the examples and see how they are used. Okay, so for some practice, what I want you to do is to have a look at 3 sentences, and I want you to match to the explanation. So we've got 3 sentences, 3 examples, and 3 definitions. See if you can match, and then we'll check together. So number 1, it had been snowing since Monday. Number 2, Mary was driving on a quiet road when she witnessed the accident. Number 3, when she spoke to the police, they didn't believe her. And here we have our 3 explanations. A completed action followed by another action. B, an action that happened before a time in the past. And C, an action that was interrupted by a second action. So all I want you to do is to connect. What do you think? Number 1, is it A, B, or C? Number 2, A, B, or C? Number 3, A, B, or C? Pause the video and then we'll check together. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, so it had been snowing since Monday. This is describing an action that happened before a time in the past. So, had been snowing happened in the past since Monday. Number 2 is C. Mary was driving when she witnessed the accident. So, it's an action that was interrupted by a second action. Mary was driving. In the middle of driving, she witnessed the accident. So it interrupts the first action. And number 3, when she spoke to the police, they didn't believe her. This is a completed action followed by another action. So Mary spoke to the police, finished. They didn't believe her. So this is quite a useful tool, a useful thing to use when you're describing, when you're telling a story, something that happened. You have a continuous tense interrupted by something else. So in our example here, Mary was driving, past continuous, when she witnessed, past simple, the accident. And this is what I want us to practice. So using a past continuous, but it's interrupted by something else. Something happened in the middle of this. So I'm going to give you 3 sentences and I want you to complete them with your own ideas. Number 1, he was cycling on a quiet road when. Number 2, the friends were chatting in the local pub when. And number 3, the couple were hiking in the forest when. So try and use what we've just talked about. I've given you the past continuous. All I want you to do is to complete the sentence and use a past simple to show that something happened in the middle. What happened while he was cycling? What happened while the friends were chatting? And what happened while the couple were hiking? So you can be as imaginative and as creative as you want. It doesn't matter, but try and use a past simple tense. Pause the video and try and finish the sentences. Okay, so lots of different options there, depending on how creative you are. I've completed them with some possible ideas. Let's have a look what I've written. So number 1, he was cycling on a quiet road when his tyre went flat. He got a puncture. His tyre went flat. Number 2, the friends were chatting in the pub when the police arrived. And number 3, the couple were hiking in the forest when they heard a loud bang. So some of mine were more dramatic than others, but the point being that it's quite a useful technique to use when you're describing a story, past continuous and past simple to show that something happened in the middle. Okay, so this idea of organising, of ordering events in the past can be very important when you're telling a story, when you're recounting a sequence of events. There's lots of vocabulary we can use to do this, which we will look at in Narrative Tenses 2, Lesson 13. But in this lesson, I want us to look at how grammatically we can show what happened first. Okay, in these sentences, what happened first? Arriving at the cinema or the film starting? Number 1, I arrived at the cinema and the film started. Number 2. I arrived at the cinema and the film had started. Number 3. I had arrived at the cinema when the film started. So I think you're going to need to take a bit of time here. Read the sentences very carefully, and all I want you to do is for each sentence, tell me what happened first, arriving at the cinema or the film starting. So pause the slide and make some notes. Okay, so hopefully you've written down what happened first. Did you also have the chance to think about why? How did you decide what happened first? Okay, let's have a look at the next slide, which will explain this for us. So sentence 1, I arrived at the cinema and the film started. So we've got arrived and started both in past simple, and this shows that they happened at the same time. I arrived at the cinema and the film started. So they happened, you arrived, the film started. So a good situation. You didn't miss any of the film. Maybe not so good if you wanted time to go and buy some popcorn and something to drink. But in any case, using past simple and past simple here shows that they happened at the same time. Okay, sentence number 2. I arrived at the cinema and the film had started. So in this situation, it's not such a good situation because the film had started first. And we know this because look at the tenses. I arrived is past simple. The film had started is past perfect. So we use this to show that something happened before another event. So in this situation, if somebody says to you, I arrived at the cinema and the film had started, your reaction would be, oh dear, I'm sorry, what a shame, because the person is explaining to you that they missed the beginning of the programme. Okay, and in sentence 3, I had arrived at the cinema when the film started. Again, this is a happy situation because I had arrived happened before the film started in your past simple. So again, your reaction here would be great, fantastic. You had time to go and get popcorn or whatever you needed, but the person listening would be able to understand what happened first. And this can be quite an important thing when you're narrating a story. So very important there to think about what tense you use in order to organise the sequence of events. Okay, so the final part of the lesson, we're talking about telling a story, telling an anecdote, recounting something that's happened to you. What's the correct order? So I've given you A, B, C, D, and E, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences. And what order do you think these things happened? So sentence A, one evening after work, my phone rang. B, it was my friend asking where I was. C, 1 week ago, I reserved a table at a popular restaurant. D, I had forgotten that we had reserved a table. And E, while I was cooking dinner. So all I want you to do here is to read the sentences and logically, what do you think the correct order, the correct sequence is here? So let's have a look at them one more time. Pause the slide and see if you can put them in the correct order. Okay, how did you do? Let's have a look together. Okay. So the first one is C. 1 week ago tells us it happened quite a long time ago. 1 week ago, I reserved a table at a popular restaurant. Then A, one evening after work, my phone rang. E, while I was cooking dinner. So here you can see that sequence of I was cooking dinner. In the middle of this, the phone rang. It was my friend asking where I was. And the last one, D, I had forgotten that we had reserved a table. So a very simple story there, but perhaps a normal situation that you tell somebody about the next day when you arrive at work, when you arrive at the office. And this is what these narrative tenses are very useful for, to when you're describing a funny story or something that happened to you and you want to explain the sequence of events. Well done in this lesson, everybody. There's a lot of information, a lot of useful review as well, I think. So a very key lesson to go back and have a look at. As I explained, there will be narrative tenses 2 happening in lesson 13. And we'll be looking in that lesson at using words like while, as soon as, during, suddenly to organise events. This lesson was focused more on the grammar. But the next lesson will be lesson 12 and a vocabulary lesson on a really nice topic, travel. And it will focus on phrasal verbs for travel. There are lots of phrasal verbs for travel to look at. And we are also going to discuss the differences between British English and American English vocabulary in this topic. So lesson 12 will be a very interesting lesson, and I really hope you will join me for it. So thank you very much and see you next time. Goodbye.